How did Iran, confident in its missile power and regional influence, suddenly find itself hit by the United States in a way no one expected? It began just before dawn, a silence broken only by the distant hum of engines somewhere above Iranian skies. Moments later, a series of pinpoint explosions lit up radar installations, missile depots, and command hubs deep inside Iran's territory. Within seconds, decades of military buildup, designed to deter adversaries and project power across the Middle East, were reduced to twisted metal and burning debris. The world froze. Intelligence feeds confirmed it was no accident. This was a coordinated U.S. strike executed with surgical precision. Tehran's leadership, accustomed to challenging Washington and its allies through proxy militias and cyber warfare, had been caught completely off guard. For years, Iran boasted that its Sajil and Khorramshahr ballistic missiles, alongside swarms of Shahed drones, could overwhelm any opponent. That confidence evaporated in a single morning. This strike wasn't just another military operation, it was a message. Washington, long criticized for being reactive, had made a deliberate choice to act preemptively, to defend Israel, and to send an unmistakable warning to every hostile actor in the region. Images leaked online showed Iranian air defense systems burning, their radar dishes bent like paper. Social media erupted. Was this payback for recent proxy attacks on Israel? A preventive strike on Iran's hypersonic missile program? Or the opening shot of something far larger? This documentary takes you inside the strike that stunned Iran and the world, revealing how U.S. intelligence, stealth aircraft, cyber dominance, and precision weapons converged in a single, devastating moment. It also explores what this means for Iran's long-term strategy and whether this event signals a regional shift toward open confrontation. For years, Iran built its power on what it called strategic patience. It didn't need to fight direct wars. Instead, it used asymmetric warfare to bleed its rivals slowly. Drones like the Shahed 136 and Mohajer 6 hovered over Gulf waters, while ballistic missiles such as the Sajil 2 and Khorramshahr threatened targets far beyond Iran's borders. Proxy militias in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen gave Tehran reach without accountability. In Tehran's view, it was winning the long game. But in Washington, a quiet transformation had begun. For decades, U.S. responses to Iranian aggression were largely defensive. Sanctions, diplomatic isolation, covert cyber operations like Stuxnet. That changed in 2025. The Pentagon, under Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, approved a shift from containment to active deterrence. Instead of merely punishing Iran after the fact, the U.S. would strike first to eliminate critical threats before they could be used. Retired General Mark Hastings, speaking in an interview, summed it up. We stopped playing catch-up. We decided to stay 2 moves ahead of Iran's playbook. This policy change came after a series of escalating provocations. In early 2025, Iranian-backed militias launched coordinated drone attacks on Israeli port facilities in Ashdod and Haifa, disrupting supply chains and injuring civilians. Iranian hackers simultaneously hit power grid systems in southern Israel and attempted to breach U.S. military logistics networks. Then came the tipping point. Iran publicly tested its Fateh 1 hypersonic missile, capable of reaching Tel Aviv in under 7 minutes. For Israel, this was an existential threat. For Washington, it was a red line. A joint intelligence assessment concluded that within months, Iran could deploy hypersonic weapons in hardened underground silos, making a preemptive strike nearly impossible later. President Biden addressed the National Security Council. We cannot wait for these missiles to become operational, and pointed at our allies. We act now or we deal with consequences none of us are ready for. Thus was born Operation Sentinel Edge, a plan integrating cyber warfare, stealth bombers, naval power, and space-based surveillance to cripple Iran's offensive capabilities before they could be unleashed. The strike that followed wasn't an isolated act of retaliation. It was the execution of a new doctrine. The U.S. would not only defend Israel, but also dismantle threats at their source. It began at 2:17 a.m. local time. Iranian radar operators near Kermanshah noticed strange flickers on their Bavar 373 air defense screens. Then nothing. For the next 12 minutes, Iran's most advanced surface-to-air missile network was blind. U.S. Cyber Command had delivered the first strike, a silent digital barrage that shut down command and control links across western Iran. Seconds later, stealth aircraft crossed Iranian airspace. B-2 Spirit bombers from Whiteman Air Force Base, supported by in-flight refueling over the Arabian Gulf, released precision-guided massive ordnance penetrator (MOP) bombs onto hardened missile storage bunkers. The targets were no coincidence. Khorramshahr and Sejil missile depots in Kermanshah province. Drone assembly lines in Isfahan responsible for Shahed series. UAVs, IRGC Quds Force headquarters, coordinating regional proxy attacks. From the sea, the USS Florida, an Ohio-class guided missile submarine, launched 22 Tomahawk Block VI missiles, each programmed to skim terrain and strike radar and command centers near Bandar Abbas and Bushehr. The Tomahawks hit within seconds of the bomber's payload, overwhelming what remained of Iran's point defense systems like the Russian-made Tor M1 batteries. In orbit, American satellites relayed real-time targeting updates, while Israeli early warning stations provided confirmation of missile launches. Patriot PAC-3 and Israeli Iron Dome interceptors stood ready, successfully neutralizing the few ballistic missiles Iran managed to fire in retaliation. By 2:59 a.m., it was over. Fireballs illuminated the desert sky where Iran's drone factories once stood. Satellite imagery released 48 hours later confirmed catastrophic damage. Critical infrastructure reduced to rubble, missile stockpiles either destroyed or burning uncontrollably. Independent analysts estimated that the strike erased 3 to 5 years of Iranian weapons development capacity. Tehran's official response called the attack an act of war, yet military analysts saw something else: shock and hesitation. Iran's leadership had gambled that dispersing missile production and using underground facilities would deter U.S. strikes. Instead, it had been blindsided by a combined arms operation that integrated cyber warfare, stealth bombing, precision cruise missiles, and allied intelligence in a single coordinated wave. One retired CENTCOM commander, quoted anonymously, summed it up: "This wasn't just about Israel's defense, it was about reshaping the battlefield. Iran just lost its teeth, at least for now." The United States and Iran have been on a collision course for over 4 decades. The tension began in 1979 when Iranian revolutionaries stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, holding 52 American diplomats hostage for 444 days. From that moment, mistrust hardened into policy. In the decades that followed, Iran built its identity as a revolutionary state opposed to American influence and fiercely hostile toward Israel. Through its Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, Tehran funded Hezbollah in Lebanon, armed Hamas in Gaza, and trained Shiite militias across Iraq and Syria. Each proxy extended Iran's reach, allowing it to challenge Israel without firing a direct shot. Washington's response was sanctions, covert operations, and limited military actions. But by the early 2000s and 20s, Iran's strategy escalated. It began exporting drones like the Shahed 136, used by Russian forces in Ukraine, and openly developed hypersonic missiles capable of reaching Tel Aviv in minutes. Its naval forces harassed U.S. and allied shipping in the Gulf, while cyber units targeted American infrastructure. The breaking point came in late 2024 when Iran moved Fatah-1 hypersonic missiles into launch positions near Bushehr, threatening not just Israel but U.S. forces across the region. Intelligence officials concluded Iran was no longer a regional irritant. It was becoming a direct strategic threat. One Israeli analyst put it bluntly, "This isn't 1979 anymore. Iran is arming for a war it believes it can win." The 2025 U.S. strike was not simply retaliation. It was the culmination of decades of unresolved hostility, proxy warfare, and escalating technological competition. The message was clear: Washington would not allow Iran to cross the threshold from regional power to uncontested missile superpower. The 2025 strike on Iran was not just an American operation. It was the product of decades of alliance building and relentless technological innovation. At its core stood the U.S.-Israel Security Partnership, a relationship forged in shared intelligence and battlefield technology. Israeli early warning radars detected shifts in Iranian missile deployment weeks before the strike. Cyber units from both nations worked together, mapping Iran's air defense networks and identifying vulnerabilities. In orbit, American reconnaissance satellites provided high-resolution imagery down to individual missile silos, while Israel's OFEC satellites monitored launch activity in real time. On the ground and at sea, cutting-edge weapons played their roles. F-35 Lightning II stealth fighters operated alongside B-2 Spirit bombers, using sensor fusion to feed live data to command centers thousands of miles away. Tomahawk Block V cruise missiles, launched from the USS Florida submarine, programmed with AI-assisted target recognition to evade Iranian defenses. Aegis ballistic missile defense destroyers in the Mediterranean, linked with Israel's Arrow 3 and Iron Dome interceptors, creating an impenetrable protective shield. Even cyberspace was a battlefield. U.S. Cyber Command's offensive teams disabled Iran's command and control systems, buying the critical minutes needed for precision strikes. As one Pentagon analyst noted, this was war in 3 dimensions: land, air, space, and a fourth, cyberspace. Iran never saw it coming. The strike's success underscored a new doctrine. Alliances backed by next-generation technology can dismantle even well-defended modern military powers in hours, not weeks. It was a message not only for Tehran, but for every adversary watching closely from Beijing to Pyongyang. Inside Washington, the strike was not a spontaneous reaction. It was the result of a political and military shift years in the making. In the past, American administrations debated endlessly about red lines and proportional responses. By 2025, that hesitation was gone. Bipartisan consensus had quietly formed. Iran's hypersonic missile program and proxy wars pose not just a regional nuisance, but a direct strategic threat to U.S. forces and allies. The Pentagon's 2025 budget reflected this urgency. $58 billion dedicated to missile defense and unmanned combat systems, including loyal wingman drones and hypersonic interceptors. Military readiness followed suit. The U.S. Navy reinforced its Fifth Fleet presence in Bahrain, deploying Aegis-equipped destroyers and nuclear submarines capable of launching precision cruise missiles from secure distances. The Air Force rotated F-35 squadrons into Gulf air bases, while Space Command integrated satellite intelligence with live targeting operations on the ground. In the Situation Room, President Biden was briefed by Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs General Charles Brown Jr. One official described the moment. It wasn't a debate of if we strike, but how fast and how hard we do it. Meanwhile, Iran faced internal pressure of its own. Widespread protests over economic hardship and frustration with the Revolutionary Guard's dominance left Tehran vulnerable politically. Its leaders vowed retaliation, but the reality was grim. key missile depots destroyed, drone production halted, and command networks crippled. The strike became a symbol of Washington's renewed willingness to act preemptively, reinforcing America's global reputation for overwhelming force when its core interests and allies were threatened. The smoke had barely cleared when Iran vowed revenge. State television broadcast images of senior commanders standing defiantly, promising that the Islamic Republic will respond at a time and place of its choosing. Yet behind the rhetoric, intelligence reports painted a different picture. Missile production crippled, drone facilities in ruins, and command networks fragmented. For Israel, the strike bought breathing room, removing the immediate threat of hypersonic missile attacks. For Washington, it marked a turning point. No longer reactive, but willing to hit first when red lines were crossed. Allies cheered, adversaries watched in silence, and ordinary people across the region wondered if this was the start of something bigger. Will Iran rebuild quickly, leaning on its network of proxies and cyber warfare units? Or will this devastating blow push it toward new negotiations, or worse, new escalations? Could this strike prevent a wider war, or did it just light the fuse for one? One Pentagon official put it bluntly, "We won this round, but the game is far from over." What happens next could redefine the Middle East for decades to come. If this story gave you something to think about, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective matters, and we'd love to hear it. And if you don't want to miss the next chapter of stories that shape our world, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Together, let's keep the conversation going.